Return of the Mount Hua Sect. Chapter 231. What is it with that one? Where is it? Chung Myung was looking deep into the lake as he went down. I see no end to this place. It looked like the body of water was somewhere between a pond and a lake. It didn't look too huge on the outside, but its depth was really different from other lakes. Only now did he understand exactly how the snake could live here, and the lower he went, the darker it got. Normally, if the water was clear, one would be able to see the bottom right away. But the divine pond was so deep that even light couldn't penetrate its depths. Chung Myung kept descending, chasing after the ink-scaled blood python. I need to kill it even if it means my death. Chung Myung bit his lip. The herb was one thing, but he had suffered so much for it. So he thought it was only polite to offer some of the sufferings he had gone through back to the one who had made him suffer. And regardless of whether it was a beast or not, he couldn't believe that it had the gall to run away. Absolutely no manners. Sure, even if it did surrender, Chung Myung wasn't the kind of person who would just accept it. And if it didn't give itself up, he would go snatch it instead. Wasn't that basic in Gangho? It has been like this since time immemorial. What bullshit is that, brat? Is it not? Forget it then. Fine. Maybe it wasn't the Taoist or Murim way, but it was the Chung Myung way. Snake or not, I'll come for you. Chung Myung's eyes shone with madness as he dived deeper into the lake. Everything around him was now pitch black, but Chung Myung's eyes could still see something. Right, just now he saw something move. Huh? Something moved. Tung. Chung Myung's body was swept away as he was suddenly hit by something. No, he was swept away by the seaweed on the ground and then was hit by a jet of water. Grr. He screamed, but no sound came since he was in the water. Chung Myung, who regained his bearings, turned his head. What was that? Immediately, his doubt was resolved. Woom, woom, woom. The entire lake seemed to be resonating, and water rushed towards Chung Myung. A water bomb? A water bomb that was larger than a human body flew towards Chung Myung. It seemed like it was the snake's doing. You keep doing such stupid things in times like this. Huh? Ah! He was swept away again by a strong current, unable to dodge the water bomb, and spun around like a top. Ah, he gulped some water down. That bastard! The snake lived in the water, so it had an advantage over him. If they had been fighting outside the water, then he could have avoided this water bomb with ease. Moreover, it seemed as though even the snake thought that it was important to kill Chung Myung in the water. That was why it was luring him into it. But warriors were known to be able to hold their breaths far longer than normal people in the water. Perhaps the snake had noticed it, so it seemed to calculate the distance and tried to make sure that Chung Myung didn't get close to it. It was aiming to make him go back up. Right, you snake brat. How dare you try to beat me by using your head? Chung Myung drew his sword and threw it forward. But before he pulled the sword out, he made his body lighter and gripped the handle tightly. Chak! The sword cut through the water with a swift motion. Tung! More water bombs were fired again, but they were all split as the sword advanced. There! Chung Myung's eyes lit up little by little as the bottom of the lake began to appear in his vision from the light of his sword. And in the distance, he saw the snake moving around. No matter how much it ran in the same place, it was a rat waiting to get poisoned. No, it was a snake with nowhere to go. Chung Myung swam straight for it. Fighting a giant snake in the water was burdensome with his current strength. However, if he could kill it and cut down its head, he thought it would be worth it. After that, he would pull out its organs and return them back to the snake. The snake also seemed to know that the human in front of it was planning something horrific, so it came barreling towards him, moving its tail. Ah! It would be a lot easier if you just opened your mouth and eat me. Then he would just head straight in and split his stomach. However, this snake was so weirdly smart that it did the most unconventional things. Perhaps it had understood that Chung Myung was planning to rip it open from the inside. Swish! Chung Myung's eyes shone when he saw the dark tail coming for him. He knew that he would be pushed back if he took that attack head on. So instead of that, clench. Chung Myung readied the sword he had retrieved and infused it with sword ki. Come, you cannot run now. But no matter what it did, neither the sword nor the human who was holding it fell off. Even when it hit its tail on the pond's floor, the human wasn't letting go. Now, the only other method that it saw was to bite its own tail. However, that was what the human wanted. The moment it opened its mouth, the human would capitalize on it. Since it knew that it would be unable to do that, the snake went back to swinging its tail and hitting it on the pond floor. Right, I need to break the snake's head too. Chung Myung quickly pulled out his sword that was stuck in the snake's tail and turned his body and shoved his sword towards the snake head that was coming for him. It wasn't just Chung Myung's power that had gone down in the water. Even the effect and sharpness of his sword seemed dulled. Crack! Chung Myung's sword got stuck in the back of its nose. The snake immediately opened up its mouth in pain but closed it right away. Chung Myung gripped his sword tighter. Give me that internal key! Give me that core, you snake bastard! The snake continued to shake off Chung Myung in desperation. Thud, thud. It kept hitting its face several times with its tail. Maybe it was because the pain on its nose was greater that it could constantly hit itself. This is why you're a beast! Although it was narrow, it could have escaped by staying in the middle of the lake, and Chung Myung would have suffered a bit. But maybe it was a habit, or maybe it was because it was simply stupid, but it was sticking to the wall of the lake constantly. Thanks to that, it had accumulated a lot of damage. Air! Chung Myung kicked the snake in the face and swam back a bit. He then thrust his sword forward again. If he took any more time, the lack of air would become troublesome for him, so he had to finish it immediately. Chung Myung readied himself. The broken edge of the sword shone purple, and the light spread in the water. Now, everything in the lake could be seen. The snake now had major wounds on its face, tail, and body. The one who had escaped into the water before didn't seem to have any intention of running again from here. The snake had its scales all standing up again, and Chung Myung clenched his sword in preparation for the final blow. You are strong, right? Be happy with that. In your next life, don't be too harsh on humans and live peacefully. If you had acted that way now, wouldn't I have taken the purple woodgrass and simply walked away? As if it sensed Chung Myung was ready to kill it, its body trembled. It was clear that the snake was feeling fear, but it still stood its ground. Now, give up your... Huh? Chung Myung's face contorted as he saw something. Pull it out! Pull it out! Before it comes out, pull it out and head back. Is this enough? Just pull everything around out. Yes. The disciples of Mount Hua were squatting on the ground and were pulling out the purple woodgrass. Yeah, don't pull it like that. It is said they needed to be pulled from the roots to last longer. They won't survive if you just pluck them. Sa-young. Fortunately, Jogul, who had a knack for herbs, took the lead, and the other disciples of Mount Hua simply nodded their heads and collected the herbs according to his instructions. The disciples of Mount Hua gathered them in their pouches and jumped up. Did you pluck them all? Yes. Look again and see if we've left anything out. We pulled them all out. Baek-chun nodded. Right, then let's go. The disciples of Mount Hua escaped far from the divine pond. First of all, it was because they didn't know when the snake would pop out of the water again. Along with that, the fact that they were in someone else's land was more burdensome. Although the palace lord had said that entering the divine pond had nothing to do with the beast palace, the disciples of Mount Hua couldn't let go of their uneasiness since they were accustomed to the customs of the Central Plains. Good, we got the herbs. The disciples of Mount Hua looked into the pouch with relieved faces. At that time, the palace lord, who had been watching them, slowly approached them and held out his hand. Give it to me. Huh? The sack and the pouch. Give it to me. Baekchun looked at the palace lord with different eyes. Why is someone who has been quiet until now asking for the herbs all of a sudden? No. Baekchun had several thoughts running through his head for a moment and took a step back. Seeing that, the lord frowned. You aren't going to give it to me. No, it isn't that. The beast palace lord nodded his head. Right. You are suspicious of me now. The faces of the disciples became stiff immediately. In fact, even if the Lord had other thoughts, the disciples didn't have the strength to protect themselves. Pathetic people, looking so nervous. The beast palace lord laughed. If I had such intentions, wouldn't one hit be enough? True. Baekchun finally relaxed. I am sorry, but this is too important to us. I understand. I am not trying to steal or destroy it. Just watch. Without hesitation, he held out the pouch to the Lord. Talking anymore would hurt each other's feelings. The Lord smiled as he opened the pouch. He then took out half the herbs and planted them back onto the ground. What are you doing? Isn't the reason you came here the divine grass? Yes, it is as you said. Will that be enough? Actually, they didn't know for certain. The more plants they brought, the more they could grow. In such a way, they could be secured in the future. If everything is pulled out from here, then there will be no new growth. If we plant them in a familiar environment, the grass will grow faster and better. I see. I haven't been able to touch it since it wasn't within my boundary. But since this isn't too close to the pond, I can always secure them and send them to Mount Hua when needed. Wouldn't that be convenient? Baekchun's eyes went wide. He was doing it for us. Perhaps the Lord had more loyalty to Mount Hua than he imagined. Yes. The Lord then handed the half-full pouch back to Baekchun. At his feet, new plants could be seen. Greed corrupts everything. Living with nature has taught us to take only what we need. As such, we gain wisdom by giving away what is left. I have learned a lot, my lord. The Lord smiled and turned around. Seeing his wide shoulders, Baekchun said, It is done, right? Yes. Now, all we have to do is wait for Chung Myung to. The disciples looked at the lake with anxious eyes. Why isn't he coming? Is he dead? At Jogo's words, Yunjong screamed. Why are you so happy? He cannot die like that. I'm not happy. I'm sad, okay? Your words sounded weird. It was the moment when the two were arguing. Bubble. A few water bubbles floated over the calm lake. Bubble. And the bubbles were getting bigger and bigger. Ah! With a bizarre scream, Chung Myung's body shot out of the water. Splash! Chung Myung fell back into the water as soon as he emerged and came out of the lake looking exhausted. I thought I was going to die. Chung Myung, who finally reached the ground, had water dripping down from him and everyone looked at him. What about the inner core? It didn't have one. I said it didn't have one. I wasted a lot of my energy for nothing. Such a huge spirit creature didn't have an inner core. Is that even possible? How can I know? Maybe it sold it or hid it somewhere. Anyway, it didn't have one. Why are you yelling? Yunjong, who was being yelled at, asked Chung Myung dejectedly. At that moment, Chung Myung saw the pouch in Baekchun's hand and asked, Did you pick them all up? Half. Seeing a newly created planting ground for the grass, Chung Myung nodded, understanding. Then we are done. Let's go. I said, let's go. Chung Myung waved his hand and pushed the disciples aside. Why are you in such a hurry? Because I don't want to see this place anymore. Let's go. Enough. I'm going to Mount Hua. Sasu can live here if he wants to. In the end, Baekchun broke free from his thoughts and followed Chung Myung. The other disciples also returned to the Beast Palace without regrets. Even if they didn't get the inner core, it was fine. Even if they found it, it wouldn't have been theirs, so they should be glad about just getting the grass. Anyway, our mission is accomplished. Thinking about the happy faces of the elders and sect leader, they wanted to return to Mount Hua too. Let's go. Yes. The disciples and the Lord headed back to the palace with light steps. Yu Yi-sol, who was following everyone from the back, glanced behind her. Then, after tilting her head for a moment, she went to where the pond was and ran around the bushes. Bubble. Soon, the middle of the pond had ripples in it, and the huge head of the snake popped out. It is still alive. It didn't have a look of hostility like it did before. Considering its ferocious look, this was shocking. Why? Chung Myung, who was merciless even to humans, was leaving a spirit creature. Yu Yi-sol, who was worrying about the reason, suddenly exclaimed as she saw something. Behind the huge body of the snake, something small could be seen. It was a pure white body and bright red eyes. Of course, even the smallest snake was big enough to rival the size of a human. But they were going round and around the bigger snake and looked like the smaller version of the ink-scaled blood python. Kids. A smile bloomed on Yu Yi-sol's lips as she saw 3 kids sticking their heads out beside the older one. Aren't you coming? Coming. In response to the voice from behind, she smiled as she looked at the younger ones. Grow up well and don't hurt people. And after putting the bushes back in the normal state, she ran towards her Sayong like nothing had happened. Chapter 232. What is with that one? Don't move! The one who moves is the culprit! What is he saying? Please understand, it isn't like you've only known us a day or two. Baek-chun sighed, looking at Chung Myung. The sack that held the purple woodgrass lay on Chung Myung's back. As soon as they returned to the palace, he grabbed onto the sack, saying he would protect it. So cute. Don't say that even as a joke. He'll start believing it's true. At Jogo's trembling words, Baek-chun laughed. Of course, Chung Myung is amazing. But it isn't something I cannot understand. Just because they had done their task easier than they thought they would, it didn't make it any less important. Only with this herb could the soul vitality pill even be made in Mount Hua. Because of that herb was more precious than gold to Mount Hua. It was only natural that Chung Myung's nerves weren't calming down. Since it's so important, I cannot leave it here for others to protect. We should get back to Mount Hua as soon as possible. Chung Myung nodded his head. The elder's neck must have gotten longer by an inch. Baek-chun imagined the elders with an inch-long neck and shook his head. Right. This journey took longer than I thought. Who could have thought they would have to go through so much to get their hands on the herb? When he thought about it, Baek-chun felt like the time he had spent was too precious. He turned his head and looked at the other disciples. Are you ready to leave? There is nothing more left to prepare. We don't have any luggage. Right. He nodded quickly, then looking at Chung Myung, he spoke in a slight voice. Then, without delay, let's greet the Beast Palace Lord and leave. Since he showed us a lot of favor, we need to properly greet him before we leave. Yeah, we should do that. Chung Myung nodded his head. In his opinion, he wanted to leave right away, but they had to make a good relationship with the Beast Palace Lord. Because he has the purple woodgrass. Chung Myung frowned. The more he thought, the smarter the Lord seemed to him. He gave them the herbs and then won the favor of Mount Hua. He even made a new growing field for the other half of the herbs in a new place. Of course, this was beneficial for Mount Hua too. since they had a lot of herbs in hand, and now there was the future possibility of having it supplied. At that time, Yunjong and Jogul sneakily approached Chung Myung. "Ah, what? Don't approach me so recklessly." "We won't take it, brat. We're people of Mount Hua too," Jogul screamed and felt shocked. Yunjong opened his mouth with a serious expression. "Chung Myung, huh? I have something to talk to you about." "Huh?" Chung Myung tilted his head, hearing the seriousness of this voice. "Why do we have to do that?" Chung Myung glanced at Yunjong seriously at that question, and Yunjong spoke up in a calm manner. "No, think about it. It isn't like we are blocking the trade to Yunnan, and we aren't preventing them from coming in. They themselves don't want to come into the Central Plains, so why do we have to convince them? There are many reasons. It's about the people starving again, isn't it? Sahyong. Yunjong Sahyong. That isn't our duty or responsibility. No, I also feel that it's sad, but there are things you can do and things you cannot do." "No, it isn't just because of that." Jogul, who was beside them, waved and said, "If Sahyong was doing things only with compassion, I would have stopped him before he spoke to you. But when you think about it, it isn't so simple." At Jogul's words, Chung Myung narrowed his eyes. "Then? Money." "Huh? Money?" Jogul's eyes shone. As he heard the word money, Chung Myung frowned, looking at the two. "So, I will explain." But before Jogul spoke, Chung Myung spoke. "Since the food situation in Yunnan doesn't look good, if we can buy food and then sell it in exchange for Yunnan tea, money can be made, right?" Of course, there will be a small amount of goods changed, but the supply will be absolutely insufficient. If we can acquire the trade rights to the tea of Yunnan, we can earn much more than the top 10 merchant groups of the Central Plains, can't we? And since Sahyong's family can handle it on our behalf, we can eat the hen and the egg. That's what you wanted to say, right?" Jogul was wide-eyed. "So you were thinking about it. Did you think I was stupid?" "Yes." "What?" No. Chung Myung smiled. "I know what Sahyong is thinking, but you know one thing and don't know the other. For us, the important thing is not making money in Yunnan. We have to make sure to maintain a good relationship with the Beast Palace. I mean, we don't have to do things for the sake of others. Money? Surely it is important, but there are things more important than money in the world." Yunjong and Jogul looked at Chung Myung and gently exchanged glances. He normally goes crazy at the mention of making money. And Sahyong knew that too. Who knew this money demon would have a change of heart? Chung Myung looked at the two. "So stop thinking of useless things and pack your bags." Yunjong groaned and lowered his head. "Can't we just try it out and test our luck?" "Huh?" Chung Myung looked at Yunjong, who didn't want to give up. "Doesn't the Beast Palace Lord take care of you? He might listen to your words. Actually, the fact that the palace is blocking the trade here is because they don't like the Central Plains." Chung Myung frowned. Thinking about it, it wasn't wrong. After a moment's thought, he said, "All right, let's test our luck." "Right, I won't hope for anything more." "Instead," Chung Myung smiled, "there will be something Sahyong has to prepare." "Huh?" "It isn't anything huge." Chung Myung smiled. "Isn't it said that one's appearance makes it easier to negotiate?" Anxiety struck the faces of Yunjong and Jogul. Baekchun looked at Chung Myung with blank eyes. Why?" "No." He started at his head and looked down to his toes. "Why are you—" "What?" Baekchun took a deep breath. Chung Myung was dressed in a blue uniform, and he held a fan made of pure white feathers in one hand. It was similar to the looks of Zhuge Liang, but it was something of a poorer version. Chung Myung stood tall with a weird face. "If you are going to negotiate in Yunnan, you need to dress like this." Baekchun, who was smiling with his bag on the back, frowned as he turned back. But as soon as he turned, he saw a couple of people. And how did you two end up like this? Yoonjung and Jogul silently touched their wet eyes with their sleeves. The white feather fan in Chung Myung's hands had been made by these two. Chung Myung had demanded a robe for himself and asked for a fan to be made by them. The two of them, unable to get past their thoughts of Kunming, jumped into the jungle with bare feet and chased after a bird with long tail feathers. Thanks to that, they had been scratched in multiple places on their body due to the branches and other angry birds. That damn bastard! Even a dog won't bite him. Thanks to that, they succeeded in making the white feather fan in the nick of time. The result of those tears and worries was now in the hands of Chung Myung. As expected, history is bound to repeat itself. At this point, won't everyone just listen to me? Seeing Chung Myung smiling at his own words, Baekchun spoke to the others in a serious tone. Everyone, listen to me very carefully. Yes, Sasuk. When we get back to our place, this stays a secret. If the Juga family finds out we try to impersonate one of their members, they would come after us with swords. They will. The disciples all sighed as they heard Baekchun's words. Either way, Chung Myung was spreading his arms to the left and right, admiring the clothes he had. Then he coughed and said, "Okay, now to the palace, Lord." It was then. "Are you inside?" Huh? Chung Myung opened the doors at the knock and heard something from outside. "Our Lord is looking for the disciple Chung Myung." Eh? Chung Myung tilted his head. "Why?" "I don't know the reason. He asked me to inform you to stop by when he had time." "Is that so?" Chung Myung nodded his head. He had to find out why the Lord wanted to meet him, so he thought that going right now would be better. "Then I'll go." Don't worry, because I speak very well. I can probably go around making people believe that I'm Juga Chung Myung. I hope Juga Chung Myung freezes to death." Baekchun, with a stiff face, watched as Chung Myung began to walk away. "Everyone." "Yes, Sahyung." "Take your bags." "Huh?" "Keep the bags on you at all times so we can move quickly." "Yes." Baekchun looked at Chung Myung with an anxious gaze. "Please, don't create trouble, Chung Myung. Please." "You are here already." "Yes. Is there anything special going on?" "What can? But what is with that outfit?" "I placed a bit of effort in my appearance." "Well, can there be a warrior dressed like this?" "Right?" Chung Myung spread out his arms and sprinted ahead and sat in front of the Lord. "I am here because you called for me." "Yes, I had something to say, so I called for you." "Yes, please speak." The palace lord looked at Chung Myung. "It is a bit awkward to say it with my own mouth, but weren't the disciples of Mount Hua taken care of by the palace?" "Ah, you did. Thank you very much." This was sincere. Even if the Plum Blossom Sword Saint was a hero of Yunnan, it wasn't easy to have the same goodwill to the descendants of that man. So, Chung Myung had to thank the palace lord. However, the Beast Palace Lord opened his mouth with a troubled face. "I don't mean to say this, but..." "Huh?" Seeing his intense face and twisted body, Chung Myung frowned. "I have a favor to ask." "A favor?" "Yes." The Beast Palace Lord sighed and looked at Chung Myung. "This is also the request that the Beast Palace is making to Mount Hua, and I, the Lord Mengso." "Wait. Your name is Mengso?" "Yes." "So as in small?" The Lord nodded his head. "I was so small that my father called me that." "No. What happened for someone who was small to grow up this huge? Did he eat some kind of body-enhancing fruits?" "Anyway," the man continued to speak with a slightly embarrassed face. "This is also the request from the Lord of the Beast Palace, Mengso, to disciple Chung Myung of Mount Hua. Chung Myung sat straight. If this was how he was speaking, then this had to be huge. A person who's done favors for them needed to be treated right. Please, tell me. Well, Mengso, who had been mumbling something, took a deep breath and said, I know it is a difficult request, but can't Mount Hua engage in trade with Yunnan? Huh? Trade? Sorry? The tea trade. Huh? I know that it is difficult. Hearing that, Chung Myung asked with a blank face, You want to trade tea? Yes. With Mount Hua? Yes. Chung Myung thought that the whole thing was absurd. No, what is with him? Isn't this something that I'm supposed to ask him? Why are things so twisted? Chapter 233. What is with that one? Chung Myung tilted his head. Seeing that, Mengso frowned. Again, I know that it isn't easy. Of course, it isn't easy. I might fall asleep since it turned out to be so easy. But it is for Mount Hua. Chung Myung tilted his head and asked, Can I ask a couple of questions? Anything. First, you realize that the situation in Yunnan isn't good, right? Mengso smiled bitterly. You speak like I have no eyes. Of course, I know that as well. Then how come you haven't done anything about it until now? Hearing that question from Chung Myung, Mengso slightly pouted. Right. I understand why you would think that way. From your eyes, it would seem like I am blocking the trade between Yunnan and the Central Plains. It isn't that? I have no excuses. It is a situation where anyone would think that. But Mengso calmed his expression and said, It wasn't me who stopped the trade between the two places. It was the decision of my predecessors. Even though I am the Lord now, I cannot simply overturn the will of my predecessors. True. Authority didn't come just from sitting in a seat of power, particularly for a place that boasted its glorious history like the Beast Palace. If there was no respect for the ancestors, there wouldn't be anyone loyal to the Lord. No matter how strong the Lord was, the moment he denied the decisions of his predecessors, his authority was bound to fall. A leader cannot lead a nation with weakened authority. Considering the situation of Yunnan, which had been horribly pushed to a corner, it was unclear what would happen to the place if such decisions were made. And the people of Yunnan do not welcome the people from your side. If I force a trade route to open, there would be countless people who would not like it. As such, I've become tied up in the situation. Even if their lives are at stake. Humans do not live on food alone. Sometimes there are more important things than eating. Chung Myung frowned a little, unable to understand, and the Lord noticed it. As if it wasn't enough that we were betrayed. We have been called barbarians and have been hated by the people of the Central Plains for a long time. That is why we cannot bow our heads to them. I understand what you mean. Something would have changed if the other side apologized to us first. But they don't even pay attention to Yunnan. Those who should apologize do not even bother showing their faces in Yunnan. So what can I do? He seemed really frustrated. You have been through tough times. At Chung Myung's sincere words, the Beast Palace Lord, Mengso, let out a deep sigh. Even though I am the Lord of the Beast Palace, I have a duty to feed the people of Yunnan. But there simply isn't enough food to feed everyone. So, I have to buy the grains from somewhere else. So far, we solved it a little through exchanges with the West. But now, we have reached a limit. And And you appeared at the same time. Chung Myung nodded. No, wait. Chung Myung's eyes widened. Then all of it. As soon as they met, hailing them to be the descendants of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, and laughing out loud and giving them drinks was all. Chung Myung had thought this man was a simple, kind idiot, but Chung Myung was the idiot. Wow, Lord, you are a scary person. I am ashamed. Mengso smiled bitterly. It isn't like I devised a great ploy or something. Usually, people who see my appearance and hear my voice think that I am an idiot. If I had a slightly normal body, maybe your thoughts would have been different. It's really shocking. I'm a bit surprised. Mengso let out a soft laugh, and the muscles in his body were twitching. Who would look at him and think he is smart? Perhaps that was the reason Mengso took advantage of his own appearance. Mengso was the most unusual person Chung Myung had met in his new life. Then what you said about the Plum Blossom Sword Saint? Don't get that wrong. He really is the hero of Yunnan. He really helped us selflessly. Well, sure, call me that. Who among the people I've beat up would say this? But honestly, I was really amazed to see his descendants come here. You are really wonderful. It was nothing. Mengso had a bitter smile on his lips. I needed someone to depend on. Even if we resume the trade with the Central Plains, there has to be a justification that is good enough for the people of Yunnan to not react to it negatively. If the party on the other side of the trade was Mount Hua, the sect that the Plum Blossom Sword Saint belonged to, they would be a bit taken aback, but they wouldn't openly oppose it. A fox? You're a sly fox. Chung Myung had thought the man was a bear, but he was a fox. Chung Myung smiled and nodded his head. I roughly understand what is going on. It is such a favor I want to ask of you. Mengso bowed his head to Chung Myung. I love the people of Yunnan. They are rough but simple people. I cannot see them starving anymore. I have done my best, but I have finally reached my limit. So please, help me. I promise that it will not hurt you. Chung Myung leaned back and folded his hands. However, unlike his thinking appearance, he was smiling on the inside. What kind of result is this? He came here to propose a trade, but the other party initiated it first. If Yunnan's tea could be sold by Mount Hua, the benefits they would gain from it would be beyond imagination. Chung Myung opened his mouth wide as he imagined Mount Hua covered in gold. Gold? Nothing. Chung Myung was unable to hold back the laughter and covered his mouth. But seeing his expression, Mengso thought of something else. It's difficult, right? Mengso frowned. I know it isn't an easy situation. I heard the situation of Mount Hua isn't good either. Meanwhile, I am not someone who can make things work out like the people in Sichuan who I keep an eye on. It was natural for him to think this way. It was only a few years ago that Mount Hua began to grow rapidly. The fact that this news hadn't spread completely, even in the Central Plains, made sure that Yunnan had no knowledge of it either. Of course, Chung Myung had shown his prowess by subduing the snake in the pond, but the strength of one person didn't represent the strength of the sect. Therefore, for the Beast Palace Lord, the Mount Hua Sect was still continuing to struggle. Moreover, considering the complicated situation of Sichuan, it was inevitable that he wanted to have Mount Hua make the trade with them. Of course, Chung Myung was holding his thighs and trying to stop back his laughter at this point. Is it difficult? Right? Even though Mount Hua is making a ton of money. On the way here, they made an alliance with the Sichuan Tang family. And then, they were pushed into a cart, which was pulled by some efficient horses and was quickly brought into the heart of Yunnan. This was all hard work. Sayang! Sect Leader Sayang! It is said that people who live the good life are blessed. I'm so lucky that I decided to spare the snake. What? The core? Let's talk about that later, Sayong. I'll be eating rice with gold powder sprinkled on it soon. Mengso sighed and looked at Chung Myung's red face. I cannot help it if it is that tough. Eh? Eh? Suddenly, Mengso gave up and Chung Myung moved, startled at the situation. And then he grabbed the Lord's hand with both his hands. The man flinched back as he saw the watery eyes of the disciple in front of him. However, the predator, Chung Myung, didn't let go of his hand. Is difficult or not difficult so important in our relationship? What is important is that Mount Hua and the Beast Palace are friends. Friends? Yes, friends. Chung Myung gave a weak smile. How sad must you have felt during all this time? The bloody 9 Great Sect bastards! Right. When one of them said some words, looking down on the 9 Great Sects, both of them agreed with each other right away. And no one understands the situation in Yunnan better than Mount Hua. Our sect defeated the demonic sect members, but we weren't even shown that grace. Yeah, right. I am aware of it. We aren't ignorant of that. We are comrades. Comrades. Right. My Mount Hua isn't like the others. Who will help us if not each other? The Beast Palace and Mount Hua can be called brothers despite the fact that we do not share the same blood. I like that word very much. It was a moment when those who had been abandoned in the past felt friendship as they touched each other's wounds. So don't worry. I will sell the tea with all the power of Mount Hua. Oh, to that extent. There was a hint of shock in Mengso's eyes. What? Is this a scam? Eh? Why say that? This isn't a scam, but a cooperation. Chung Myung giggled and waved his hand. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. If you do, Yunnan will regard Mount Hua as a benefactor. I think it's better to have it written down. We need to have such things written down so that they don't change. Chung Myung shook his head and took the paper and ink brush that was on the table. He then ran to get a plate. Good. It is good to go ahead with trust and faith, but a relationship with needs has to continue for a long time. So, there must be evidence that can be confirmed to ensure its continual. Evidence? Yes, it's nothing special, just... Chung Myung shrugged his shoulders. Something like a trivial promise to give Mount Hua the right to monopolize the tea trade with Yunnan for the next 100 years. For those 100 years, no other merchant can trade with Yunnan. Well, even that trivial thing has to be written down. If you put your print on this, who would dare doubt the relationship between the two of us? The Lord tilted his head. You are quite helpful. I'm just a Taoist. I have no hesitation when it comes to helping others. But for the first time, it was Mengso who was feeling like he had no other option. Then, do I just need to transfer the exclusive rights to you? If there is anything more, I'll just let you know. I have to say this, though. The Beast Palace Lord had a serious expression. The reason I sought this from you is because I thought that you, whom I have seen for only a short while, isn't an evil one. If you had killed the ink-scaled blood python, I would have never proposed this. So, promise me, no matter what kind of profit you take, it will help solve the difficulties of the people of Yunnan. Chung Myung looked at the man with serious eyes. I promise. There was no more need for other words. Good. Hearing Chung Myung's answer, the Lord grabbed the brush and began to write the contract without regrets. The contract that was written at once was flawless and perfect. He wrote down every detail and took out a stamp and stamped it. Soon after, he handed it to Chung Myung. This man is smart. Perhaps all this had played out in the Lord's mind a long time ago. The clauses in the contract were thorough and clean, and were unbelievably clear to find loopholes in. Is there anything else? No, this is good. Chung Myung grinned and looked at the contract. Should I bring Sasuk, since he is now the acting leader? No, I believe you. What about me? The name of the person who will become the best in the world in the future has heavier worth than the sect leader. Chung Myung took the contract and signed it. Finally, the two shared a copy of the contract and looked at each other. Is this finished then? Right, but I have a personal request. Huh? The Lord scratched his head as he put on a humble expression. This is actually an embarrassing one. The man sighed and had difficulty speaking, and when he was done, he smiled. Well, if that's the kind of request it is, don't worry, I'll do it perfectly. And then Chung Myung giggled, making Ming so worried. Will that be fine? You worry about every small thing. I'm Chung Myung. Chung Myung pounded his chest as he said that. But I'm not sure if that can happen. Mengso, who had looked worried until then, sighed out in relief. Chapter 234. What is with that one? A spacious hall spread out in front of the central hall. The guards of the Beast Palace were lined up to the left and right. It was daunting to see the warriors with the copper-colored muscles and stiff faces lined up so obediently. Among those who were lined up stood the disciples of Mount Hua with awkward expressions on their faces. What is it this time? Chung Myung. The disciples of Mount Hua, who didn't know what was happening, all looked at Chung Myung with eyes full of doubt and worry. But the man just shrugged his shoulders and fanned himself with a white feather fan. Ah, it is nothing. It will end soon, so just bear with it. Chung Myung, what you say doesn't give us confidence at all. So don't surprise us later. Why not just explain it to us now? Unfortunately, Baekchun's wishes didn't come true. Before Chung Myung could speak, the Beast Palace Lord appeared in front of them. Huh? And Baekchun became a bit perplexed when he saw the Lord. It wasn't a completely different look. He still had those thundering steps, but the feeling the man gave. It was the momentum the man had, the one that made it heavy and tough to stand. Step, step. Entering the hall with his daunting walk, the Lord sat on a huge chair at the top of the stairs and looked down. All the guards and people present there knelt down. Long live the Beast Palace Lord! Long live our Lord! And then Mengso greeted them in a polite manner. I'm sick of this. No matter how many times I've seen this, I still can't get used to it. The disciples of Mount Hua trembled. Actually, it was quite difficult for someone to see so many guards and soldiers at the same time in the Central Plains. To see something like this there, one had to visit the Imperial Palace. And the Lord, who looked down with a slightly arrogant expression, said, Right. His low voice echoed around the room. Why did you ask to see me, disciple of Mount Hua? Chung Myung stepped ahead, and then, at once, he fell flat. To the great Beast Palace Lord, I have a request. Please do not bite down on this request of mine. Please have mercy on this disciple. As soon as the disciples of Mount Hua heard that, their eyes went wide. What was that? What is he saying? This insane bastard. Did he eat something wrong? What's with him? It wasn't what to say or not say, but no, Chung Myung was saying the things he would normally never even utter in his dreams. Chung Myung is showing such a low-lying attitude. Something is definitely up. Baekchun looked at Chung Myung's back as he lay on the ground face down with anxiety and worry. Rise. The Beast Palace Lord looked at Chung Myung with serious eyes. It was a gaze that lacked the easiness he had in the past few days. Now, he literally looked like the king of the Beast Palace, the ruler of the South. If you are the descendant of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, you have the right to make a request. So speak. descendant of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint and disciple of Mount Hua. I will listen to your request and then decide if I will or will not do it. I am touched at the sentiment, Beast Palace Lord. Thud. Chung Myung banged his head on the floor. What is with him? I don't know. Just leave it. Baekchun and Jogul whispered. It was hard to keep track of what was happening in front of their eyes. Either way, Chung Myung continued to speak in a loud voice so that everyone could hear him. I dare to ask the great lord of the Nanman Beast Palace to have mercy on us who have come this far and grant us permission to trade with Yunnan. What? The lord got up from his seat with a shout, and with blazing eyes, he looked at Chung Myung like he wanted to kill him. Don't you realize that the trade between the two places is prohibited, no matter the fact that you are the guest at the Beast Palace? Do you think you can head back safely if you try to violate the rules handed down to us by our ancestors? The voice of the palace lord echoed all around. At the strong voice, not just the soldiers, but even the disciples of Mount Hua trembled. But Chung Myung banged his head to the ground and said, Lord, aren't the merchants of the Central Plains already coming to Yunnan? Are you insulting the palace by bringing that up? I would never. But isn't it better to keep the legacy of your ancestors strong by doing trade with just one place instead of with so many merchants? The man snorted. The soldiers all looked around at each other. Clearly, they too had realized that the words weren't wrong. We respect the Beast Palace more than anyone in the Central Plains, and we can follow the rules here as well. How can you say that for sure? We are the descendants of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, and we are the disciples of Mount Hua who lost their home and name due to the forces of the Central Plains who have ignored us. If we cannot understand the situation of Yunnan, then who could? The Beast Palace Lord looked at Chung Myung with wide eyes. But we cannot believe in the Central Plains. The Plum Blossom Sword Saint is also from the Central Plains. Can you even be compared to him? Obviously we cannot, but we can follow in his footsteps. If he wanted to protect Yunnan, then of course, as his descendants, we would protect Yunnan as well. Isn't that the responsibility of Mount Hua, as people who worship the Plum Blossom Sword Saint as our ancestor? This was clearly out for everyone. Baekchun, who was watching this unfold, was shocked. Was he always this eloquent? Of course, there was no reason to not admit that Chung Myung could speak. However, there was a difference between speaking well and speaking logically. But right now, isn't that guy speaking like he has the ability to mesmerize people? If someone who didn't know him listens, they would think of him as some scholar. Then, does that mean that we haven't seen his full colors yet? That was the moment when Baekchun started looking at Chung Myung in a new light. So, our Mount Hua, what was next? Huh? The face of the Lord changed. Yeah, brat, I told you to mesmerize it well. Wait, it's possible that he could have forgotten it. As if something was wrong, Chung Myung swung his sleeve as if calming his face, and then began to speak as if nothing had happened. Baekchun didn't miss that exchange with his hawk eyes. I think there is something in that sleeve he moved. Something like paper. This bastard, he's reciting stuff. Of course. No wonder he's able to say such things. So please understand the true nature of Mount Hua, my lord. In the end, a relationship is just a coincidence if humans decide not to connect it. If our ancestors hadn't intended for this, would we have ever been able to come to this land and be taken care of like this by the Beast Palace Lord? It is our ancestors who have opened the path to Yunnan. Is that what you are saying? That is what I believe. The Lord closed his eyes with a serious expression. The expression on his face made it look like he was thinking. This should be enough, right? Of course, Chung Myung and the Lord had already gone through this. However, this show was needed to make the trade. It was the law of the Nanman Beast Palace that there always needed to be a justification for everything, and now it was given. And from the Lord's view, it felt like Chung Myung taking the lower position, asking for the trade to happen with him, and accepting the offer would be better than the reverse. Each of these little things would show the authority of the Lord. And the fact that the descendants of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, who were different from the rest of the Central Plains, had a lot of respect for their Lord would show their trust to others. What do you think? The Lord looked around and asked the people in front of him. A guardian in the front opened his mouth. Lord, the man's words aren't wrong. However, the will of the ancestors has to be maintained. They are the descendants of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, someone we are so grateful to. Are we saying we cannot grant them help? It would have been different if it was the Plum Blossom Sword Saint himself, but they are just disciples. We cannot treat them the same way just because they belong to the same sect, right? As he heard such words come out, the Lord frowned. The legacy of one's predecessor is important. Lord, this cannot be accepted. Lord, do not forget the disgrace we suffered because of the Central Plains. The Beast Palace should never put its pride aside. Sometimes, pride is more important than life. Protect our pride. Hold onto our pride. The people kneeling were yelling in unison. Seeing that, the Lord closed his eyes. It won't work despite all this. The play had been created because the Beast Palace Lord feared this. He wanted to publicly make a show about the trade, but nothing had changed. Everyone seemed to agree with the old men. Is it this deep? The rift between the two places. No matter how much one tries, it cannot be healed. It was at this moment when he sighed. Legacy? Chung Myung, who was lying down, got up. He looked at the old men who spoke. Shit, he's gonna hit the fan. Stop him from opening that mouth. Baekchun and Yoonjung exchanged glances. But, Chung Myung pushed off the two who rushed towards him. Yoonjung and Baekchun were shocked at how he had slipped away from them. Of course, this wasn't the first time he had slipped away, but wasn't Chung Myung someone who would push them or throw them? However, right now, Chung Myung used martial arts to push them away. Chung Myung! Baekchun called for him, but Chung Myung didn't even glance back at them. Legacy, was it? Chung Myung continued speaking in a low voice. What is this legacy? What is with you? I asked, what is this legacy? The guardian took a step back and looked at Chung Myung. Our ancestors have told us to never mingle with the people of the Central Plains. Those who violate that rule will be punished with death. Then everyone here should be dead. What? Why should we? Why is the peace merchant in Kunming? What are you people doing, not stopping the people of the Central Plains who are coming into Yunnan like you said earlier? The guardian's face went red. However, Chung Myung didn't stop. Of course, I understand. It is a matter of making a living, but it is used to cover the issue of simply living. Are you insulting the Beast Palace? No, I'm insulting you, not the palace. Don't use the Beast Palace as a shield. Someone, drag that bastard out. Keep the legacy. Is that really the only legacy your ancestors left you? The guardian was a bit embarrassed at it. Didn't your ancestors leave behind the legacy of the people? Didn't they want you to take good care of the people of Yunnan? The guardian shut his mouth. Chung Myung, who looked at him, then turned to the Lord. Didn't they leave that behind? The Lord sighed and said, No, there was definitely a legacy like that. It is a natural one to know too. Then which legacy will be upheld? Chung Myung looked at everyone and shouted, I bet your ancestors would be so happy if they were to see Yunnan right now. They will applaud the people of Yunnan for following the legacy to the extent that the people are starving to death. Change your position. Do you think your descendants would like this kind of place? All their faces went red. The ancestors. Only those who cannot make decisions for themselves keep talking about ancestors. Did your ancestors really want their descendants to do this? No parent wants their child to be turned into a helpless puppet because of rules they cannot change. Chung Myung stretched out his hand. Huh? Yoonjung, who was listening to his words, saw something. Unconsciously, he stood there with a blank expression. As soon as my Sahyang Yoonjung arrived in Gunming, he took out all the things he had and even sold his sword to help the people of Yunnan. Thank you, idiot. But why bring that up now? Then I ask you, Chung Myung growled, who is more helpful for the people of Yunnan in the eyes of your ancestors? Is it my Sahyang, who wanted to do anything he could to fill the stomachs of the people who are starving, or is it the ones who ignore them in their deaths? No one answered, making Chung Myung angry. Legacy, my ass! What kind of bastard would use the word legacy when people are dying? Even from the point of view of an ancestor of a collapsed sect, Chung Myung couldn't understand these people. A legacy was just a legacy. It was a lesson that could be learned, not a rule. The world is changing so quickly. How long would they be able to keep using legacy as an excuse? Chung Myung glared at the people in front of him. There was no need to talk anymore. I wasted my time here. Let's go. Chung Myung turned without another thought, and at that moment... Wait a moment. Chung Myung turned back with an angry look. The Lord looked at Yoonjung. Yoonjung, was it? Yes. I want to ask you something. Yoonjung nodded with a slightly nervous expression. Chapter 235. What is with that one? Yoonjung gulped. A lot of people were now suddenly looking at him. This included the Lord, his men, and the guards. His legs felt wobbly. At that moment, the roaring voice of the Lord reached his ears. I heard you used all your money to help the poor in Gunming. Yoonjung nodded. He knew that even if he tried to speak, his voice wouldn't come out. Why? The Beast Palace Lord asked him a stupefying question. You are a person of the Central Plains. You came here on a mission. But why did you decide to do that? Standing out wouldn't be good, right? Yoonjung shut his mouth. He had already talked about this with Jogul, but now he might have to tell a different story. With his eyes closed and his thoughts organized, Yoonjung raised his head and looked at the Lord. I don't quite understand the meaning of the question. I asked, why did you do that? I still do not understand. Yoonjung stopped trembling. Then he took a deep breath and looked forward. Does a person need a reason to help others? The Beast Palace Lord flinched slightly as he heard this unexpected answer. It doesn't matter whether we are from Yunnan or the Central Plains. If there is someone in front of me who needs help, I will help them. Seeing Yoonjung speaking confidently, Chung Myung whispered to Jogul. I think that was too much. Way too much. These bastards. Yoonjung coughed as he heard their words and immediately looked forward again. Then are you saying that you will do the same thing the next time you're in such a situation? No. Yoonjung shook his head. The way of the Tao does not work like that. The Tao is called the Tao only when it happens by coincidence. If the circumstance and the people who is helping others change, how can the same situation happen? I just do what my heart tells me to do. What your heart tells you to. The Lord's lips turned to a slight smile. So that means that you just wanted to help at that moment and therefore did. Yes, even by selling your sword. Why do people keep talking about the sword? I am reflecting on it. You regret it. I regret it, but at the same time, I don't. Yoonjung proudly spoke. Then the Lord tilted his head and asked, "Strange words. What does that mean?" Yunjong stayed silent for a while, and after he finished organizing his thoughts, he opened his mouth again. "It is something I should reflect on. My reckless actions led to the endangerment of my sayongs and sajes. I deserve to be blamed for that." Yunjong closed his eyes and then spoke again as he looked at the Lord. "Mount Hua is my everything. This is why I do not regret what I did. And Mount Hua is a place that values the well-being of the starving more than that of a sword. At least, that is how I have learned. Even if it goes against your teachings. How can Mount Hua teach that swords are more important than dying people?" Yunjong's voice gradually began to get filled with anger as he spoke. "Do you think a Taoist is someone who climbs mountains and talks about Tao when he is ultimately a selfish man who ignores the winds and waves that keeps crashing onto the world for his own comfort? No, that is why we explore the world. The Tao is not the heart that goes out for people, but rather it is the hands and feet that give them the ability to move." Yunjong's voice resounded clearly in everyone's ears. If it was the sect leader here, I know that he would have sold everything on him along with his own sword to help the people. Of course, the glory of Mount Hua is important. However, if it isn't going to lead us to helping the lives of people, then what is that glory for? To enjoy the advantages of being a Taoist? Gradually, he stood tall in front of the crushing pressure of the Beast Palace Lord. All delusions broke inside him as he established himself. "I had been thinking all this time, why did it have to be Mount Hua? Why is Mount Hua seeking its former glory? Do you know the answer I found? What is it? There is no reason for it at all." It was certainly a weird answer. However, Yunjong spoke with certainty. If there is no reason, then we have to create the reason. If the glory of Mount Hua made it easier for those living in the world to have a good life, all the disciples of Mount Hua would be proud of it. But that is Mount Hua. As long as it stays in the shade, Mount Hua will continue to help and follow the teachings of the Tao. We will do that regardless of whether we get replaced by another sect at any time. Yunjong spoke firmly. It was the answer to the question he had been asking himself for a long time, and that answer was now communicated. "I will make Mount Hua into an irreplaceable place. I will make it a place where everyone in the world can rejoice in the glory of Mount Hua. That is what it means to be a disciple of Mount Hua." The Lord trembled. How was he this? Resolution. This wasn't a matter of right or wrong. This child understands what he had to do with his role as a warrior and what he had to pursue to be called Taoist at the same time. Could anyone in the palace be remotely insightful as this child is? Mount Hua, the sect which produced the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. They only heard of the greatness of the sword. But, right, Mount Hua is the Taoist sect. Mount Hua was a martial sect that went beyond pursuing the way of the Tao, and this child was following it to the extent that even the elders of the palace bowed their heads to him. The Lord closed his eyes. He too avoided the chaos that was present in his reality, without being embarrassed, and he opened his eyes. "Listen, people. Yes, from this moment on, none of the merchants of the Central Plains will be given rights to enter Yunnan. Yes, from now on, all trade between Yunnan and the Central Plains will be through Mount Hua. Lord, think again. Shut up!" The Lord let out a roar. "Are you going to embarrass me? Someone who had no relationship with Yunnan sold his sword to feed our poor. Are you saying that I, a palace lord, should turn away such people when they are in need?" The palace lord yelled loudly. It showed how angry he was. "Is there anything wrong with what they said? Do we have to make our people starve because of our ancestors? If we do that, we do not respect the people who built this place. People are always more precious than the will of the dead." All the people bowed their heads. Even though they were from here, why didn't they have a heart for the people of Yunnan? At that time, the guardian in the front bowed and said, "Let us do that, my lord. I will be the first to meet our ancestors in the underworld. If all it takes is insulting me in exchange for the people of Yunnan being happy, is there a problem with that?" First Guardian, it has been a long time, such a long time. I think we have done enough. We are old and ignorant, and we do not know what is right anymore. The disciples of Mount Hua has made me realize this. I was chasing after something in vain. The Lord nodded. "Listen. Yes, Lord. I will not allow any more disagreement. If you recognize me as the Lord of the Beast Palace and respect my authority, do not complain about this. I will give Mount Hua the sole right to trade with us." "We heed your command." All the people knelt down in unison. Mengso looked around at everyone as he descended the stairs, and he walked to where Chung Myung and Yunjung were with a smile. "I have nothing else to give but my thanks." "It was nothing. I'm glad it worked out." Hearing Chung Myung's words, he smiled and nodded. "We accepted the descendants of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint as our honored guests. But from this moment, I recognize you not as his descendants, but as the disciples of Mount Hua and friends of our Beast Palace. None among you will be discriminated against again in here." Baekchun moved forward. Chung Myung and Yunjung retreated to the left and right, and Baekchun took the center. "On behalf of Mount Hua, I give my thanks." "It is fine, really." The Lord looked up at the sky. He stared at the blazing sun above Yunnan for a while before lowering his head. Then he grabbed Chung Myung's hand and said, "You really did well." "I think we did well coming to Yunnan." Baekchun smiled and nodded his head. This time, the Lord turned to Yunjung. "And, Disciple Yunjung." "Yes, Lord." "I have learned a lot from Disciple Yunjung. Although I am a warrior, I do not know of the Tao or what exactly right and wrong is, but at least I can rest assured that Mount Hua still holds on to the Tao. It is a bit embarrassing. Please stop by Yunnan from time to time and teach us." "I am a young disciple who is still learning. Compared to the elders and sect leader of Mount Hua, my Tao is nothing." "Then I should come to visit the sect leader. I surely cannot request him to come this far." With a proud face, the Lord smiled and slammed Chung Myung on the shoulder with his hand. "Mount Hua has the Tao in martial arts, so it will not be long before its former glory is restored. Can the Beast Palace be by its side?" "Ah, you will have a hard time though." "What?" The Lord once again slammed Chung Myung on the shoulders as he laughed. "I will die like this." "Ah, right." Chung Myung, who had been buried into the ground until his knees, lifted himself up and then grumbled. "Anyway, things have all been resolved here, and the contract has also been made. So, adhere to the content." "That is an obvious thing." "Right, I believe in you, since we are friends." "Right, friend." The two held each other's hands as they smiled at each other. "Yes, do you want to rest for a few days? The time has come for the peach extract to ripen again." Sure sounds tasty, but I have to head back now." "Already?" "Yes, there are people waiting for us to come back." Chung Myung tilted his head and looked back. "It has been a long time, and I miss it already. The mountain slope, the incense lit up in the altar hall, the laughter of the elders as they smiled. A disciple of Mount Hua cannot survive for long without Mount Hua. We need to leave now." "A pity." "Don't worry, we'll come see you again. If there is a problem here, come see us right away." So reassuring. All the disciples of Mount Hua greeted the Lord, who had carried all their bags on his shoulder until they reached the gate of the palace. At that moment, "The guests are leaving." Thud, 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 thud. All the guards lined up there began to stomp their feet on the ground. It was so strong that it felt like the ground beneath their feet was shaking. The Beast Palace will never forget its friends. They all roared at the top of their lungs. The images of the people doing that were clearly etched in their eyes. The disciples of Mount Hua were slightly moved by the kind of emotions they felt. When they came in, they were caught, but now they were leaving as friends. "Let's meet again!" Baekchun shouted loudly and began to move. After turning around, he wiped off the slightest resentment that was in his heart. It was a good farewell, and there was no reason to regret it since they would meet again. So, let's head back to our Mount Hua that has been waiting for us. Chapter 236. This is hell. Yoonjung looked up at the sky and thought, I want to cry. Why is the sky so clear today? Chung Myung clapped his hands and then suddenly stretched out his shoulders with a proud expression. He then began to imitate Yoonjung from a while ago. I don't know. Does a human need a reason to help others? And Jogul, who was standing in front of Chung Myung, became very surprised at Chung Myung's childish actions. I do what my heart leads me to do. That is Tao. Chung Myung and Jogul laughed, and Yoonjung continued to look up at the sky. He then looked at them from the corner of his eyes. These Sajils, what did I do to get such people? Just move over. Why on earth did he have to go through so many hardships just because he said what he wanted to? Mount Hua has Taoists. Chung Myung, we do have Taoists. We are Mount Hua because of our Taoists. Ah, right, sorry. Of course, our Mount Hua has fine Taoists. Just Taoists. Sahyung, this Saje is so impressed by you. Chung Myung, I'd rather just die. I think I would be more grateful to have my fist on his face rather than just words. Yoonjung wiped his tears and looked back at Baekchun with earnest eyes. Baekchun, who understood that, coughed and looked at the two of his juniors. You should stop it now. All right. Yes, I understand, Sasuk. When the two of them, who were joking around, had gone silent, Baekchun nodded his head and said, A great Taoist has been born in Mount Hua, so you shouldn't be teasing him like this. You cannot make fun of Yoonjung. You shouldn't imitate his Tao. Baekchun covered his mouth as he burst out laughing. Sasuk. Sorry. I kept thinking. Seeing Baekchun's walls collapse, Chung Myung didn't miss his chance. That is what Mount Hua teaches its disciples. I said stop it. Stop it. Chung Myung was excited. Yoonjung fell into contemplation about life and the Tao as Chung Myung wiped his tears away. Tak. Baekchun put his hand on Yoonjung's shoulder and said after a couple of coughs, There is nothing you have to be ashamed of. You are amazing, and it isn't like you did anything wrong. Moreover, we would never be able to do it. Right? To know that I had such a great Sahyung. This disciple, Chung Myung, feels amazed. Sahyung, now I believe in Sahyung alone. Baekchun rubbed his hands and pushed Chung Myung to the side. He is right. Is Sasuk going to make fun of me as well? Baekchun once again covered his mouth, trying to not laugh. Is this hell? This is hell. Seeing Yunjong in embarrassment, Baekchun had a sorry expression on his face. Actually, what Yunjong had done today was really wonderful. No matter how perfect his words had been, it wouldn't have been easy to convince the people of the Beast Palace. But Yunjong convinced them not with logic, but with his understanding of the Tao. You have done a wonderful task. Thanks to this, Mount Hua was able to strengthen their relationship with Yunnan. In comparison to this, obtaining a monopoly on Yunnan tea was considered trivial. Just building a friendship with the Nanman Beast Palace was amazing in itself. We have obtained a lot of unexpected things on our trip this time. The Beast Palace was one thing, but they formed an alliance with the Tang family as well. Along with that, they also laid a great network with many powerful forces. And above all, are you taking good care of the purple woodgrass? Look at that. Baekchun turned his head and noticed that Chung Myung still had the sack wrapped on his back. It seemed as though he would never let anyone else get a hold of it. At that point, it seemed safer than the Imperial Palace treasury. I think the same. Baekchun smiled and cleared his throat. Come closer. Yes, Sasuk. Jogul, Yunjong, Chung Myung, and Yu Yisol gathered around. First of all, it might be a little early to say this, but you all went through so much. Not at all, Sasuk. But it is too early to feel reassured yet. Our goal isn't to find the grass, but to bring it back to Mount Hua safely. Right, Chung Myung said firmly. We will transport it as fast as possible. Yes, Baekchun nodded. Everyone has done a lot and have gone through a lot until now. So, let's rest together for a while after we reach Mount Hua. You're saying such obvious words, Sasuk. Right. Then first, I guess we need to meet with the merchant group again. Huh? Why them? At Chung Myung's words, Baekchun frowned slightly. Isn't that the only way to get out of Yunnan? What? We can just buy a carriage. We even have horses. Horses? Baekchun was a bit shocked. I am too hungry. I will really die from this. I can't even beg. The people here are heartless. It looks like my skin will start to sag from now. I have nothing to depend on. At the pouring complaints of his accomplices, Bangyo sighed. A few days had passed since Chung Myung had left them after a warning. They were left in a remote place with nothing to do, so they decided to just pass their time there. What can we do? There's no other way. Why don't we try stealing? I don't have the key to do anything like that. Can we even be called bandits without our key? Just who got us into this position? Bangyo had tears in his eyes. If rumors start to spread that a thief had suddenly appeared in Kunming, everyone is bound to get suspicious. Do you have that confidence to handle that? As soon as those words came out, a man's face popped into the minds of everyone there. A man whom even a dog wouldn't bite. He is worse than most bandits. Just thinking about it made them groan. They were the bandits. Bandits were just a collection of normal thieves, and thieves were people who lacked morality. Those who could think right would never turn to becoming a bandit, regardless of how hard their lives were. No, even if they stole things when times got hard, they would never do such things again. To put it simply, it meant that nobody who had even a little bit of sanity in this world would willingly jump into this. And even in the eyes of such men, the man called Chung Myung had gone too far. It made them wonder what the heavens were thinking when they sent him into the world. Then what do we do? What else do? We wait. And what if we starve to death? That is better. A whole lot better, right? Everyone sighed. They were all wondering how they had come across such a devil. In my opinion, he will beat us to death with a smile on his face if we ask for it. I wonder what he saw when growing up. One of the bandits looked at Bangyo with tears in his eyes. But what do? Can we get released? How can I know that? You are ahead. If he comes back from this place, we have to go through a lot more hardships and eventually be beaten to death, right? It is better to run now. How do we live without internal ki? But shouldn't we head back to Sichuan? Sichuan? Did you say Sichuan? Yes, it is still our place. What are you, an idiot? Bangyo shouted. How many grudges have we accumulated in Sichuan? Do you think we can even survive if rumors spread about the fact that we lost our strength and turned into normal people? There will be over 100 people chasing after us with axes in their hands. Still, if we ask for the protection from the Green, do you think they will protect us? That man is someone who throws a healthy man to a tiger as food because of the loss of a single arm. Do you think that such a person would protect someone with no internal ki? No one spoke as they heard that. Bangyo clicked his tongue as he looked at them. For now, it is best to just hold on here. Do you think that man will free us if we go to him? No, they would just make us work and hit us even more. And if we make a mistake, we will surely be killed. You're quite aware. Right. It is obvious. It is obvious how vicious he is. I don't think he is that bad. What are you even talking about? I've never seen a vicious person like him in my life. I'd rather get hit by someone else. I have always been proud of my profession, but once I saw him, I had to let go of that. Whew, then it's a good thing. Right? Right. It is quite good. Bangyo slowly turned his head to the direction of the voice. His subordinates, who also became shocked when they heard the voice, also slowly turned their gaze. And Bangyo felt something inside him causing him to turn pale. When he finally turned his head to the side where the voice had come from, a familiar smiling face could be seen. It felt like the world had stopped. Bangyo immediately began to have cold sweat running down his body. He eventually opened his mouth with a trembling face as if he had seen a ghost. When did you? Just now. Then, who talked? Yes, it was me. Bangyo's face turned black after a while. Chung Myung smiled brightly. What I just meant now was... It is fine. It's totally fine. Chung Myung reached out and tapped Bangyo's shoulder. Such things can happen. In places where I don't exist, people are free to swear at others. I am sorry. I said it's fine. Chung Myung smiled happily. I am not a very bad person. I am a Taoist after all. I understand everything. A Taoist? This bastard is a Taoist. You're talking so much shit that no one would ever speak if they heard you. Where in the world has there ever been such a Taoist? Bangyo rolled his eyes as he heard it. Seeing those eyes, Chung Myung smiled delightedly. Do you know why a Taoist is a Taoist? Well, even if you hear bad things from others, you have to be able to give things to others. I learned that from my Sahyung, so I have prepared a present for you. Chung Myung moved back and came back carrying something and threw it at Bangyo. This. Bangyo tilted his head. What Chung Myung brought was hay. But what is the use of hay in Yunnan? Seeing Bangyo puzzled, Chung Myung smiled happily. As you can see, it is hay. I do, but why? No matter what, presents are great if it is something to eat. Eat it. Bangyo looked at Chung Myung with blank eyes. To eat? Hay. How can people eat this? People? Chung Myung, who frowned, opened his eyes. It was difficult for Bangyo to look into his glistening eyes. Is there anyone who is a person here? You are all horses, right? Think carefully. Yes? A horse. It is strange for me to get angry when a horse talks behind my back. But if it is a human... Clench. The stone in Chung Myung's hand was crushed. They need to pay up for their sins. Do you want to eat or get hit? Do you want to eat or turn into humans? The answer came right away. I will eat it. We love hay. Thank you. You have thought so far for us. Chung Myung smiled happily. Right? Eat a lot. Yes. Tears flowed from their eyes as they grabbed the hay. This was the price of meeting someone they shouldn't have met. Chapter 237. This is hell. And that happened. Oh my! Kwak-young, the party leader of the Peace Merchant Group, was shocked. Are you saying that you won over the cooperation of the Beast Palace? Yes. Baekchun's calm reply made Kwak-young almost lose his mind. I don't think it is a lie. But that didn't change the fact that it was absolutely unbelievable. It had been over 100 years since the Nanman Beast Palace banned trade with the Central Plains. Because such a huge money pot was at stake, the merchants of Sichuan had been trying to change the mind of the people of Yunnan for decades. However, despite all their efforts that had persisted for a long time, they couldn't overcome the stubborn decision of the Beast Palace. But these young Taoists had done it. Well then, what about the tea trade? From now on, all trade with Yunnan will happen only through Mount Hua. Now wait! Please wait for a moment. Then Baekchun glanced at Jogul. Jogul put on a smile and said, We haven't forgotten the grace of the peace merchants who brought us here. Any merchant group under the banner of Mount Hua can freely come and go from Yunnan. Ah! A look of relief appeared on Kwak-young's face. This is definitely not normal. Those who bore the name of Mount Hua could now freely move in and out of Yunnan. This meant that Mount Hua would have complete control of the Yunnan Central Plains trade in the future. In other words, in the future, Mount Hua could take advantage of the exclusive rights with Yunnan and control the trade in the Central Plains as they wish. The Yunnan tea trade generated huge profits, and the merchants who couldn't participate in it would obviously be pushed out of the competition. Now isn't the time to talk back. He had to notify their merchant group head so that he would be able to take suitable action. More than anything else. Kwak-young looked at Jogul, the second son of a merchant who was based in Sichuan. It wouldn't look good for Mount Hua to move directly into Sichuan, so they would employ an agent, and that agent was more than likely to be Jogul's father. Kwak-young, who had finally composed his thoughts, lost his complexion. Congratulations, you have obtained a huge deal. It was nothing. So, we need to head back to Sichuan. When were you thinking of heading back? But our work here isn't done. It is fine then, we can go back from here ourselves. Kwak-young's head was spinning. He knew that it was important to build relationships with Mount Hua. It would be great if I could take them directly to the head. If the Peace Merchant Group head himself came out and made a close relationship with these disciples, it would be much better. However, the answer that had come out of Baekchun's mouth shattered his expectations. Thank you for your consideration, but I think we can head back separately. We are in a hurry. The road from Sichuan will be difficult. It would be fastest for us to head back together. Moreover, it is hard for us to find horses here as well. Ah, that. Baekchun scratched his head. As he was thinking of a reply, he saw a cloud of dust forming on the road a bit away from him. Looks like he is coming. Huh? Kwak-young turned his head and looked in that direction. Ah! Run! Run! Ah! The bandits who had been pulling the carriage stopped and desperately gasped for breath. As Kwak-young saw their chests rise and fall, he felt true compassion for them. What is this? Kwak-young looked at the now fallen bandits. Why does everyone have hay in their mouths? It was just something that he just couldn't understand. At that moment, the group heard someone click their tongue in annoyance. The person in question poked their head out of the carriage. You seem too weak. Can we really reach Sichuan like this? As soon as they heard those words, the bandits on the ground raised their heads. We can go. Don't worry, we're not tired. We're not exhausted. It's true. Spare us. Chung Myung shook his head and sighed. If only I weren't a Taoist. Tears welled up in their eyes. Is any of this what a Taoist does? Since when did Taoists and bandits start sharing the same meaning? When did the world become so hard? Mother, I miss you. Either way, Chung Myung jumped off the carriage and moved to Baekchun. I brought the horses. Why is there hay in their mouths? Chung Myung shrugged. They seemed hungry. They're all horses and they have to go a long way, so I fed them. Baekchun's eyes trembled. Chung Myung, It is true that they sinned and that they are sinners, but shouldn't they be treated like humans? At those words, Chung Myung turned his head around and looked at the bandits. Did you hear that? Do you guys want to be treated like humans? They all waved their hands in denial. No, we are horses. What can horses even say? Just treat us like dogs and cows. I'm not a human at all. I'd rather die than turn into a human. Looking at them, Baekchun touched his head with his finger. See? Chung Myung smiled. Just what did he do to make a person like that? Even Baekchun couldn't comprehend his actions. Chung Myung soon opened his mouth again and said, Don't worry. If we're able to reach Sichuan very quickly, I'll release you. Is that true? Yes. You just have to run twice as fast as you were when you brought us here. If you can do that, I'll let you go alive. And if we can't? That. Chung Myung tilted his head in confusion. Seeing his unexpected reaction, Baekchun asked, What is it? No, I was wondering if talking about this out loud would help the moral of the Sahyongs. Do you really want to hear it? No, I'd rather not. There were some things better left unknown. Baekchun was about to speak, but then decided not to. In any case, even if they were beheaded, it was something that they deserved. Anyway, that's it. Please wait for more details if you want to come under Mount Hua. If you go. Gwakyung, who had wanted to speak until then, decided not to say anything else. He understood that there was no reason to hold on to them. When all the disciples got on the carriage, Chung Myung raised his voice again. Now go! Excuse me. At that moment, he heard a small sound next to him. When he turned his head, he saw a small child holding his hand out. You! Yoonjung, who had also been in the carriage, saw the child and jumped out. He then approached the child without hesitation. As Yoonjung went closer, the child bowed. Thank you. Thanks to you, my brother was able to sleep with his stomach full. Thank you very much. Yoonjung looked at the child and then nodded. I am glad. I will never forget this. Thank you. Seeing that, Chung Myung glanced around. He could see that children were sticking out their heads and moving towards them from all corners of the street. Some of the children were looking up as if they were saying thank you, while others bowed. One child clung to Yoonjung's hand and the other to the hem of his robe. Just looking at them, he could feel how touched the children were. Chung Myung slowly turned his head and looked up at the sky. Great Sahyong. Well, I won't be able to become the person Sahyong wanted me to be, but there seems to be a disciple who will follow that path. Are you happy? Chung Myung thought that it somehow looked like the Sahyong was smiling at him from the sky. Sahyong, let's go. Okay. We need to head back to Sichuan and send back rice to this place. Hurry up. We cannot stay here anymore. Right. Yoonjung had a stiff face. Stroking the heads of the children surrounding him, he spoke in a low voice. Be patient. You will not starve anymore. Right. What he saw were faces that had no expectations. They probably heard this too many times, but this was fine for now. This was all he could do to comfort them. Yunjong ruffled their hair and then went into the carriage and spoke in an angry voice. "Let's go. This is urgent. What are you doing?" Yes. Chung Myung smiled and yelled at the bandits immediately. "Move already." "Yes." As soon as Chung Myung's voice was heard, the bandits jumped onto their feet and ran despite being exhausted. There were 4 of them pulling from the front and 4 of them pushing from the back. There was also 1 person each on either side. "Push until your legs break, okay?" "Yes, Taoist." The carriage moved, and Chung Myung glanced at the children. "Move!" "Ugh! Yee-haw!" And the bandits began to pull the carriage with all their might. Soon, the carriage began to move at a huge speed. It was so fast that the name carriage didn't fit well anymore. The children all looked shocked as the carriage moved at such a high speed. There was dirt rising around them, and Gwakyung, who saw it, nodded his head. They really are like a storm. "Leader, what do we do now?" "What? Shouldn't we report this to the Lord?" "We should. Things have become a mess now." Gwakyung shook his head. "No, make a report and send it back." "Will that do?" "Yes." Gwakyung's heart felt more comfortable than before. Maybe this is for our good. No matter which merchant group took the initiative now, the fact that they would lose out was inevitable. So Mount Hua taking over the trade was right. "Goodbye. Thanks." Watching the children wave their hands, he felt more convinced. Return safely. Gwakyung smiled. I shouldn't smile. How many times had these people suffered because of the hypocrisy around them? Weren't they terrified of the people who barged into their hometowns trying to sell something? But now, things are finally changing. Gwakyung shook his head. The disciples of Mount Hua couldn't be judged by Gwakyung alone since he had only been with them for less than a month. Maybe even they would soon show their true colors and try to suck out the blood of the people of Yunnan. But Gwakyung slowly turned his head and looked at all the children who were waving at the carriage. His heart swelled at this sight. Maybe they are a bit different. Yunjong's act of trying to feed the children by selling his sword. The image of him stroking their hair before his departure. These 2 actions alone were above Gwakyung's expectations, and he looked at this as a human rather than with the eyes of a merchant. Please, take good care of yourselves, warriors of Mount Hua. Run, run you idiots! Have some strength in your legs. I will gouge your eyes out. If we don't arrive in Sichuan on time, you will all die. The bandits were biting their tongues as they dragged the carriage forward, and the person sitting behind them was threatening them with their lives. The disciples of Mount Hua were all puzzled. What's with him? The idea of buying food for the children seems to have been the decisive blow to his personality. That much? Right. It was Yunjong and not Chung Myung who was beating them. Rather, the disciples of Mount Hua shook their heads as they saw Yunjong represent Chung Myung. What? The relationship between Dao and Qi? Ha! Chapter 238. This is hell. The carriage was moving at a staggering speed. From the start, the bandits' abilities were amazing. They were able to use all their power as if they were just employing light footwork techniques so the group didn't move slowly. Head! I can know! Keep going! Yeah, brat! You need to keep going! I cannot! Do you want to go up there? Hearing the words of Bangyo, the others turned their heads. They looked at the figure on the carriage. The bandits, who had been on the verge of collapsing, flinched at the sight they saw in front of them. Right, hold on! Bangyo continued to push the cart with tears in his eyes. His legs were shaking and his mouth felt dry, but he still couldn't stop. If he stopped, wouldn't the devil take him down? No, rather than that, him treating me normally would be more problematic. Bangyo lifted his head and looked at the carriage. There were 5 bandits next to Chung Myung, who were all resting very comfortably. I said lay down. Why do you keep sitting? It is fine. Horses do not sleep nor rest. Chung Myung shook his head as he saw the bandits answering loudly. You're such idiots. Well, just rest if you want. We are really doing okay. It is so comfortable here. Really. It is so comfortable that you can just sleep like this. Bangyo looked at the bandits who said that. How can a person be this vicious? Shortly after leaving Kunming, Chung Myung put 5 of the bandits in the carriage. Since they had a large carriage, there was enough space for 5 people apart from Chung Myung to rest. What are we going to do with 10 people at the same time? They can take turns. 5 of them can move at a time. They can take turns resting. It sounded like he was being considerate to him, but in reality, it was so that they could pull the carriage 12 hours a day without a break. Well, that much was fine. It was a bit inconvenient to rest after moving the carriage, but what was the point of not having a break? Those who climbed up the carriage in joy and excitement had no choice but to realize that their resting place was right next to Chung Myung. I won't go there even if I have to die. It is better to run and die. I'd rather go to hell. That bastard is like the younger brother of the king of the underworld. Those who pushed the carriage had sad faces as they looked at their comrades inside the carriage. They were all on their knees, and Chung Myung was lying down next to them, fiddling with hay. Are you hungry? No, I am not hungry. Strange. I think you have been starving for a whole day. Isn't it time to be hungry? No, we're really fine. Is that so? Yes, we don't usually crave food. I cannot force you to eat. Fine then, don't eat. But tell me if you get hungry, I can give you food. Yes. As Chung Myung turned over and yawned, the bandits had tears of blood falling from their eyes. This hay is food. This hay. I must have sinned in my previous life. The sins you made were all in this life, you idiot. But what could they do now? They shouldn't have sinned. They should have lived like normal people. However, it was too late to regret it now. Anyway, rest well. I told you, if we go twice as fast as we came, you will be released. Yes, we trust you. Instead, Chung Myung relaxed his neck to the right and left. Crack. You should think about what would happen if you don't arrive fast. You need to run hard. We will get there before time. Right. Eat the hay if you get hungry. Chung Myung smiled and laid down again. I've become so kind. In the past, he would cut off the necks of such people the moment he came across them. Chung Myung smiled as he saw the tears of the bandits. Is there no news yet? No, Lord. Jo Pyong frowned. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop worrying. Wasn't his son in the dangerous region of Yunnan? And there was no news of him yet. Although he believed that his child was grown up and was returning in one piece, the heart of a worried parent was different. Does this mean that sending a single piece of news is this difficult? It sounds like it was carried out by an indifferent person. You realize that it is difficult to deliver anything from Yunnan to here, right? But still, Jo Pyong took a deep breath. As usual, he was walking around the garden to relieve his heart. But today, no matter how long he walked, he couldn't calm his heart. Lord, I know, Jo Pyong sighed. He couldn't waste his time here. He was the head of a merchant association and was responsible for the lives of many people under him. It was the moment he was returning to his duties with heavy footsteps. Tut-tut-tut-tut-tut-tut-tut. Huh? Jo Pyong shook his head. From the side of the main road, in front of the gate, the loud sound of footsteps could be heard. What is going on? Pyung began to frown. It was like the sound of an army advancing, and it kept getting louder. It was as if whatever was coming for him. What is it? I will go confirm it right now. It was the moment when one of his men ran to the gate. Bang! The front gate exploded with a roar. The recoil of this caused the poor man who went to check bounce into the sky. Ah! The man screamed as he flew further into the sky until Pyung couldn't keep track of him. This whole incident was too bizarre for him to immediately comprehend. With what seemed to be a force that could destroy everything in the world, the bandits who pulled the large carriage slowed down and looked around. And then they started to make weird noises. I'll live! I can live! Mother, I've arrived on time! What are those people doing? Pyung opened his eyes wide to look at the people next to the carriage. Their clothes had been tattered almost completely, and their bodies were covered in dirt and sweat. If one looked at their appearance alone, they would think that these people were beggars on the street. But in contrast to their appearance, their faces were full of joy and happiness. I am alive! Alive! We did it! Right. Everyone worked hard. This leader of yours is thrilled too. What are they doing? Pyung, who had no way of understanding the situation, just stared at them, until someone jumped off the carriage. Ah! And jumping off, the man clicked his tongue. How dare they break the gate? This is the front gate of Jogul Sayong's house. Pyung tilted his head. Who is that man? That man was clearly Chung Myung, Jogul's Saje, and Mount Hua's divine dragon. Then that... my back! I knew it would reach fast, but it is still nice. Motion sickness. Same, get off the carriage! Don't puke in there! From the carriage, the disciples of Mount Hua kept coming out. Pyung became shocked as he saw his son. Gul, you brat! What happened? Father! Jogul quickly walked up to his father. Yes, what happened was... Thud. But before he could listen to his father's question, Jogul moved. Seeing his son's eyes on fire, Pyung flinched and took a step back. However, Jogul clasped Pyung's hands tightly, not letting go of his father's hand. Father! Huh? It was his first time seeing his son look this desperate, and he felt bewildered. Grains! We need to buy grains right now. You need to secure all the grain in Chengdu. Huh? No. As soon as he came back, this idiot is spouting nonsense. What is that supposed to mean? Tea! Huh? In exchange for tea. They were meaningless words, but Pyung was a merchant. That too, a competent one. He was quickly able to understand what information Jogul was trying to tell him. So, thinking about it for a short while, Pyung summarized. The tea you are talking about is the one in Yunnan. Yes, so the four of you went there for your mission and somehow ended up getting the rights to buy tea from Yunnan. Yes, and we monopolized it. The right to sell the tea of Yunnan. Pyung tilted his head and mumbled as he suddenly jumped up. His eyes were so wide that it seemed that they would pop out at any second. You monopolized their tea? Yes, we give them grain and they give us tea. Right, we don't have time for this. Pyung's eyes began to roll back. The right to Yunnan's tea. If they gave grain, they would get tea in exchange. There were so many things he wanted to ask his son, but he didn't. He had to make preparations first. Assistant! Where is the assistant? My lord, I am here. It was the man who had gone flying before. He seemed to have fallen into the pond and had a sad expression as he crawled out. Buy all the grains in Chengdu right now. No, buy all the grains in Sichuan. Double the price. No, triple is fine too. Move. Yes. At the same time, prepare a group to move to Yunnan. It seems like the timing is urgent, so get a group as soon as possible. We will have to carry the grain for quite a distance, so we need enough carriages and horses. Yes. Seeing Jo Pyung's expression, the man rushed outside right away to make sure everything was arranged. As soon as he finished giving out orders, Jo Pyung glanced at his son again and said, I have done what you said. Now explain what is going on. Yes, so. Jo-gul, along with Yoon-jung, began to explain the situation. Chung Myung looked at them and turned around. Explaining things was something these people were good at, and Chung Myung had other things to do. Ugh, my legs are gone. I don't even have the strength to drink water. The bandits were all groaning as they rubbed their legs. Seeing the scene, Chung Myung smiled. Everyone has worked hard. No, it is all because of the disciple. Right. Chung Myung had a satisfied face. Thanks to them, running without caring about the difference between day and night, they were able to return to Sichuan twice as fast. Yes, but disciple, huh? You will forgive us, right? Bangyo asked. Of course, he was expecting a positive answer. You will release us, right? That was the question he wanted to ask, but he didn't have the courage to ask that. Where will I take you? Then, don't worry, I'll set you free. Thank you so much. Chung Myung nodded his head with a smile, and at that moment, Chung Myung's hand flew to the abdomen of the bandits and touched their dungeons rapidly. The bandits grabbed their stomachs, and then, realizing that the internal key in their bodies wasn't released yet, they asked, Disciple, what is this? But Chung Myung calmly said, I'm not lying. I will release you. Huh? The next moment, they could hear a commotion behind them, and Baekchun walked through the broken gate. Chung Myung, I brought them here. Huh? Great job, Sasuk. Brought? Whom? Bangyo and the others turned their heads with their anxious eyes. What is this ominous feeling? There were officials following Baekchun. The officials who came through the gate looked at the bandits in doubt. These people, these are the notorious bandits. The bandits looked at Chung Myung with shocked eyes. Yeah, no. And Chung Myung didn't betray their thoughts. Yes, these are the ones. Catch them. You fucking dog! Before they could even fight back, the officials rushed in and tied them with ropes. You bastards! You have been running wild for too long. You need to be beheaded. Do you think it was just 1 or 2 people who died by your hands? Take them away. As the bandits were dragged away, they all turned towards Chung Myung. Even a dog won't act like this. You fucking dog! Are you even human? You will fall into the fire of hell! There seemed to be a lot of resentment against Chung Myung. However, Chung Myung didn't respond. He just stood there, nonchalantly, picking his ears. Where are these dogs barking from? In the end, the bandits got dragged away. Baekchun, who saw the entire scene, asked, Is this fine? Is there a problem? Regardless of everything, they did work hard. Right, but they are bandits, and I did keep my promise. I let them go. But what should I do about them getting caught here? It is a bit sad though. Maybe we should have given them some hay. Oh my, our Chung Myung. You have a pretty heart, but my heart goes out to them. Chapter 239. This is hell. They're leaving. Yes. Already. Yes. Tangganak looked at Tangjan with a blank expression. It has only been an hour since we received the report that the disciples of Mount Hua returned to Yunnan. But you are saying that they have already set off for Shaanxi. I am flustered about it as well. Tangganak sighed as he heard that. He was disappointed as well. What could be the reason? They moved in such a hurry that they didn't even stop for a cup of tea. Regardless of how busy they were, he had assumed that they would stop by the Tang family estate at least once. But for them to go away without even looking for them even once, it's just like him to do that. Tang Genak let out a small sigh. As he thought about it further, he realized that there was no reason for them to come here, since Mount Hua and the Tang family were friends rather than people who had to report their situation to each other. Nevertheless, being saddened by their absence means they are special to me. Tang Genak had a bitter smile on his face. What is it that I'm feeling? It feels like the friend he had planned to play together with for a long time had suddenly cancelled on him. And this hasn't been confirmed, but what? It seems like the disciples of Mount Hua have obtained the soul rights on Yunnan tea. Soul rights? Yes, but we might have to get more confirmation. There is nothing to check. Tang Zhan was slightly shocked as he heard what the patriarch said. If it is him, he might not just have gotten the soul rights for the trade, but has probably robbed the Beast Palace as well. Even we were robbed of what we had hidden in our Tang family. So what difference does the Beast Palace make? But Tang Zhan, who remembered the face of Chung Myung, nodded as if he understood. Anyway, they have left. It was the moment Tang Genak expressed a little regret. A slightly muffled voice came from outside. Lord! What is it? The head of the Four Seas Merchant Chamber is asking to see the Lord. Tang Genak frowned. The Four Seas Merchant Chamber. Bring him in. Yes. Not long after, the door opened and Jo Pyong entered the vast room. I greet you, Lord. It has been a while. But what is the purpose of your visit? I have come to deliver a letter. A letter? Tang Genak tilted his head. If it's a letter that the head of the Four Sea Merchant Chamber is giving me, then Mount Hua's divine dragon? Yes. Tang Genak smiled. Seeing that smile, Jo Pyong was a bit shocked. I have been rude. Not at all. I smiled because it was funny. May I ask what was funny? Think about it. There are people who amass forces and aim for the necks of others in Sichuan. However, a young one is making the Lord of the Four Seas Merchant Chamber deliver a letter to me. It makes no sense. Jo Pyong smiled brightly. Age isn't all that matters. I realized that again. The letter. Here. As soon as Tang Genak received it, he opened the envelope and began to read its contents with interest. After carefully reading through it, he put it down with an expressionless face, and then stared intently at Jo Pyong. Did you read the contents of this letter? I was told to just hand it over and wait for the Lord to decide what has to be done. It is crazy. Tang Genak smiled. If the contents of this letter are true, I think the Four Seas Merchant Chamber will monopolize the tea trade with Yunnan in the future. Actually, it is Mount Hua who has the rights. We just do their work for them after taking a small fee. Even just a little will be a huge gain. Tang Genak slowly brushed his chin. Mount Hua's divine dragon wants our Tang family to participate in the tea trade as well. If we are able to safely protect the merchants from the bandits as they travel from Sichuan to Yunnan and vice versa, I think the reward will be very high. Jo Pyong was silent as he heard the unexpected contents of the letter. He looked at Tang Genak. He is really someone who wouldn't back down. This was what Chung Myung thought of him. Actually, the proposal itself wasn't bad. It was something that could be achieved without much effort. The problem was that it was none other than the Tang family to whom Chung Myung had made this proposal. The idea of entrusting the Tang family with the duties of escorts for other merchants was something no one other than Chung Myung could do. Tang Genak gently scratched his chin. What do you think? It was a question directed to Tang Zhan. Tang Zhan bowed his head as he had nothing else but one thing to say. Lord, accept it. The reason? At Tanganak's question, Tangjan cleared his throat. Of course, it isn't easy to make this decision, but it isn't too difficult either. What's more, this isn't something we should hesitate to do, since we are getting benefits. How much money do you think we could get? It will not be a monetary gain. Tanganak looked at Tangjan. His eyes looked certain. The financial gain is meaningless here. The important thing is that we will be able to enter Yunnan under the pretense of being their guardians. Is that possible? Tanganak asked in doubt, and Tangjan glanced at Jopyeong. Jopyeong, who had been silent until then, opened his mouth. I had heard that Mount Hua has a close relationship with the Beast Palace, and that all the disciples of Mount Hua were treated as equals in Yunnan. If you are part of the Tang family, which is in alliance with Mount Hua, you might be given fair treatment. The same treatment as the people of Yunnan. Tanganak began to think. Tangjan continued as soon as Jopyeong finished speaking. If we go to Yunnan, doesn't that mean we can establish a good relationship with the Beast Palace? We cannot miss this chance. It is true. Tanganak shook his head, but there was no sign of displeasure on his face. Rather, the corners of his lips were twitching, threatening to break into a smile. Four Seas Merchant Chamber Lord. Yes, my lord. From this moment on, any ascent to Yunnan will be protected in the name of the Sichuan Tang family. To those who try to interfere with the ascent, we will take it as a means of going against the Sichuan Tang. Thank you, my lord. Jopyeong bowed his head. Now, the pieces were all together. Both the merchants who had been dissatisfied with the Four Seas Merchant Chamber getting the sole rights to trade with Yunnan and the bandits aiming for profit would be careful now. At least, within Sichuan, the Tang family was king. And now, the trade between Sichuan and Yunnan was protected by the Sichuan Tang family and the Beast Palace on either side. Who would dare try to make a mess now? Then, would you like a cup of tea? No, my lord. There is too much work for me to do. I will come to get you as soon as the first ascent commences. You would probably be busy. Don't bother coming in person and just send someone. Thank you for your consideration. As Jopyeong bowed his head and left, Tanganak tapped the desk with his finger. After thinking for a while, he looked at Tangjan. What do you think? This is better than I thought. Right? Tangjan nodded his head. Someone like Mount Hua's divine dragon wouldn't simply intend for us to act like escorts. Perhaps he means for us to use our position as an ally of Mount Hua and make a link with the Nanman Beast Palace. Right. If the Beast Palace, Tang family, and Mount Hua form a friendship with each other, a line connecting Shaanxi, Sichuan, and Yunnan will get created. This way, these three places will have enormous influence in the western region. This is a new alliance that is very much unlike the 9 great sects or the 5 great families. 3 completely unique places entering into an alliance. Plum blossoms began to bloom to the west of the map of Gangho. Are you saying that he wants to redraw the power flow in Gangho? I don't know how far the Divine Dragon is thinking this, but he managed to obtain so much with just one trip to Yunnan. Yes, he is certainly capable. He smiled as he thought of the new ties that kept building up. He is indeed like an untouchable ghost. What the Sichuan Tang family had been pondering over for decades was solved in a couple of months. This isn't the end, right? Mount Hua's divine dragon. Tanganak wondered what the future was going to be like. This deal will give the Tang family a huge profit. If I had known something like this would happen, I would have given a bigger present to Mount Hua. It isn't too late. Let's send one now. Now. If the gift makes its way to Mount Hua before the divine dragon returns, it will give him little strength, and he would be more compassionate to us. They aren't people who should be dealt with through such political moves. You are still far from reality. I apologize. then without the gift, prepare it in my name." "What?" "Nothing." Tangjan lowered his head. Tangganak finally looked away from his son with a subtle smile. The entire Central Plains will be in his arms. But strangely, he felt glad about it. Mount Hua. We need to see how far it will go. No, I will gladly become one of its wings. Tangganak's eyes held passion in them. "Chung Myung, I will die like this." You won't die. I never heard of someone saying they died from running." "Yeah, you idiot. Still, in what world does it make sense to run from Sichuan to Shaanxi? Let's take a horse." "We are faster than horses." Well, that is true." At the protests, they erupted from everyone. Chung Myung frowned. "Instead of complaining, take another step forward. Our sect leader might die before we lose our strength in our legs. We will go there and then rest. Move. As long as we haven't reached Mount Hua, we cannot rest. We rest only once we reach the mountain peak." Even though they stopped by Jogul's house, they couldn't even get a glass of water before they began to run back. It was making them sick to the core. How much more was there to run? They had already been running for 4 days. Now, there seemed to be some sort of sweet smell in their mouths. Jogul, heaving his shaky legs, pushed Junjong forward, who had been falling behind. "Sayong, get yourself together. The bandits." "Huh? I thought we were being nice to the bandits. I didn't realize they had it this hard." "No, this person really trying to be nice to everyone in the world. Get yourself together." At the same time, Baekchun, who was exhaling like his life depended on it, looked at Chung Myung with suspicious eyes. "But Chung Myung." "Huh? What is it, Sasuk? Why did you bring in the Tang family? No matter how much I think about it, you're not someone to share profits with someone else." "Ah, that?" Chung Myung smiled. "It's not the money." "Huh? Surely, a lot of money will go to the merchant chamber. Of course, it will be huge. But what about the money to find escorts, if not for the Tang family?" "Right. No. Wait. Was this all?" As if on cue, Chung Myung continued. "The place has too many bandits, and when it comes to grains and tea, wouldn't they run over it like dogs? But if the people of the Tang family are there, wouldn't the merchant group feel at ease?" "That's an obvious reason." Jogul, who had been silently listening to the conversation, ran towards Chung Myung. "Yeah, what do you mean? Does this mean you're using my house?" Chung Myung clicked his tongue as he looked at Jogul, who had run to him, forgetting the pain in his legs. And then he kicked him on the butt. "No, how did someone like you come from a merchant family? The merchant chamber stays safe, and the Tang family is also satisfied. Since both of them stay on good terms, things go good for us as well. How is it a scam when everything works out?" "No one called it a scam, Chung Myung. That's what you were thinking." Chung Myung started running again in excitement. "Now, we won't be going to Sichuan or Yunnan for a while, but they shouldn't have a problem with us being absent. And the money. Money will roll in like crazy for us. We don't have to do anything, and money will keep coming to us. What can be more perfect than this?" Baekchun looked at him and shook his head. For a moment, it was as if Chung Myung's eyes had turned into a half-moon-like smile. "Weirdly, I feel bad for Yunnan and Sichuan. Sorry. However, it isn't like you are the only one suffering, so please understand. Mount Hua has it hard too." It was that moment. "There." "Huh?" Yu Yisol, who had been running without saying anything, pointed to a distant place on the horizon. "Mount Hua." Ah, they could finally see it. Far away, a cliff surrounded by clouds. A gigantic mountain peak standing high. "We are here, Mount Hua." After a long journey, they had finally reached Mount Hua. "Let's go." "Yes, Sasuk." "Yes." The disciples of Mount Hua started to run towards Mount Hua without delay. All of them had ever bright and light steps. Chapter 240. This is hell.
Yak, 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 yak.
From the morning, the crows. Of course, it wasn't like he hated crows. How could a Taoist think that the color on the outside was what defined a being? The crow was just another bird. The only problem was that the cries of the crows today seemed ominous. Am I just letting my heart go wild? The sound of a bird couldn't be too different from usual. If it sounded ominous to someone, it could only mean that the listener wasn't in a good mood. Hyunjung quietly closed his eyes and controlled his mind. Crack. Hyunjung's gaze lowered. There was a crack in the old teacup he was holding in his hand. Well, is this also a coincidence? Right. There are days when crows are just crows and teacups crack. Today is just the day when the two overlapped. Hyunjung's eyes trembled. A scroll with the words, "The highest good is like water," that had been hanging on the wall, fell to the floor. At this point, there was no escaping the fact that today was strange. It feels so weird. What is exactly going on for all these ominous things to keep happening? Hyunjung put down the teacup he was holding and took a deep breath. It is up to the heart. Everything depends on the heart.
Yak, 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 yak.
Hyunjung, who failed to control his heart and mind, got up in anger. From the morning, you constantly... Hyunjung walked out the door and proceeded to yell at the crows until he felt a gaze on him. He then lowered his hand and looked in front of him. Hyunjung was standing in the yard, shaking his head.
What are you doing?
What about you?
Well, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to come out early to do some cleaning.
I see. Hyunjung coughed a couple of times and turned back. I'm just...
Why does it look like your face is turning red?
Hyunjung's face changed. As people who walked in the path of the Tao got older, they would start to speak softer than others. Hyunjung sighed and was about to say something when... Sect leader! Sect leader! What now? Hyunjung turned his head with a sullen expression. From the other side, Hyunsang came running in. What is this fuss right from the morning? A message! Huh? Hyunsang came closer, took a deep breath, and shouted, We got a message from Hwang Village. The children have arrived in the village and are now climbing up. What? Hyunjung was shocked. Now? They should take a little time to climb, but they will arrive soon. Right. Yes. Hyunjung, who had been losing his mind until then, was now back to normal. I shouldn't be like this. After thinking that, he began to sprint to the main gate of Mount Hua. Hyunjung also threw away the broom in his hand and followed Hyunjung. Let's go together, sect leader. Hyunsang also followed Hyunjung. Hyunjung reached the gate and pushed the wooden door open. He then slowly walked out and stood in front of the gate, looking at the ascent to Mount Hua. He caught his breath. How many times had he been this excited and had run like this? His heart felt excited now. His heart wasn't as calm as when he first entered Mount Hua. They will come. They are coming. The gentle words of Hyunjung and Hyunsang were heard. They are coming now. Hyunjung looked at the hill. They have become strong. If you had given us a message, we wouldn't have been waiting this impatiently. They must have gone through a lot.
Of course. Just where is Yunnan? How hard must it have been to travel to that distant place?
In the meantime, didn't they even make an alliance with the Sichuan Tang family? Those savage idiots. Their tones were a bit violent, but they were all filled with gratitude. He was sorry for entrusting them a task that should have been done by them, and he was proud that they had done such a good job. Above all, he was just happy. Hyunjung looked at the mountain peaks.
Still, now I'll have something to talk about when I see the ancestors. I couldn't lead Mount Hua, but Mount Hua found children who could lead it. Wouldn't that be enough?
Sect leader, the kids are coming.
Yes.
Hyunjung slightly touched his eyes. It was said that one would become more sentimental the older they get. This has to be that. The children were coming home after a long time, so he had to welcome them with a smile. Step, step. Shortly after, footsteps could be heard. The sound of the footsteps wasn't fast, but they were loud enough to be heard clearly. Hyunjung clenched his fists. Now he could see them, the dignified children of Mount Hua. The pillars who will lead Mount Hua. The pill. Hyunjung's eyes trembled when he laid eyes on the children who were climbing up. The heavy steps, the messy hair, the robes of Mount Hua which had almost turned into rags. They were like ghosts. What? Didn't they go to Yunnan? Why do they look like they have been to hell? Watching the children climbing up the mountain with murderous faces, a chill ran down his spine. Mount Hua! It's Mount Hua! Mount Hua! It's Mount Hua! Mount Hua! The elders saw the disciples rub their eyes. Surprised, they took a step back, flinching. Damn it! Leaving home is truly hard work. I won't step out of Mount Hua anymore. At least I will not go out with him. Bath! 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 Yu Yisol was screaming, frustrated because she had been unable to clean herself. Seeing the terrifying sight, the faces of the elders changed. No, what happened to the kids on the journey? When they went out, they felt so fresh. Baekchun, who always stood at the forefront with a bright face, now had his gaze lowered. Sect leader! Yeah, what is with the terrifying expressions? Baekchun walked to the sect leader, clasped his hands with a sound, and said, Second-class disciple Baekchun, who left for the mission, has come back. Right. This isn't right. Normally, we should be welcoming the kids with violent tears. How did the atmosphere become like this? Seeing the sect leader a bit embarrassed, Baekchun seemed to remember something. Sect leader. Yes. The purple woodgrass. We found it. The one we went after. Chung Myung. Chung Myung slapped Baekchun's excited hands, which reached for the bag containing the grass. Don't touch it. I'll cut your finger. You crazy bastard. The medical practitioner. We need to head there. Chung Myung ran inside without even greeting the sect leader. A bath. I need to wash right now. Food. Is there any food left for me to eat? I think I'll die. I haven't had anything in the last 3 days. It felt like baby tigers were meowing even though they had left the cave and came back as beasts with cuts on their bodies. At that time, Hyunyoung took a step forward with a determined expression. Right, wash up and eat as well. What happened in Yunnan is important, but not now. You must be exhausted. We still have to report. Baekchun was the only one who had a little bit of reasoning left in him. However, Hyunyoung just snorted. Seriously, what if it succeeded and what if it failed? What is important is that you went there and suffered hardships and still returned in one piece. No, it was a success. Okay, head in. Hyunyoung pushed Baekchun inside. No, this... Enough, bastard. Eat and then talk. Does that sound good, sect leader? Yes. Right. Food is important. Hurry up and wash too. I will ask our chefs to prepare the food right away. At those words, Jogul and Yunjong's eyes widened. Food? I kept eating dry food on our way from Yunnan. Isn't that still better than hay? Right. Hay. Why is that being spoken about here?
Hyunjung looked at the disciples walking in, and he had a puzzled expression on his face. Don't you think the kids are getting a little weird? A little? Hyunjung looked at the disciples of Mount Hua with a blank expression. Seeing they come back clean, they looked like the disciples, but something about them. It is like a person who didn't exist before had seeped inside them. Or was it because they were more relaxed? It was difficult for him to put his fingers on it, but if he had to put it in a phrase, they've grown. It seemed like what people said about children growing rapidly out in the world was true. But the problem was something else. Ugh, my waist! Chung Myung was lying with his back against the wall like a puppy sleeping in a warm place. Isn't it closer to growing old rather than growth for this brat? Apart from that, they also kept reciting the weirdest chants. Of course, they must have been through a lot, but now they were calling the elders Hyung. Yes. Did everyone have a good time? Yes, sect leader. Yes. Baekchun was being Baekchun. He restored his original face before the others could respond. Thanks to your concern, we managed to safely bring back the grass from Yunnan. Although there have been several incidents. And then he suddenly fell flat on the spot. No, why are you doing this? I asked to be punished for abusing the authority given to me without asking the sect leader for permission. Get up. But, sect leader, why did I entrust the authority to you? Outside of here, you're the one looking after them. Your choice is mine, so you don't need to seek punishment. Sect leader, stop kneeling and sit down. At those words, Baekchun got up. Hyunjung, who sternly asked him to get up, showed a gentle face again. Right. Can I hear what happened now? Yes, but before that, I would like to ask one thing. Has the head of the Tang family visited Mount Hua? Yes, I did hear about the situation from the Tang Lord, but I would like to hear it from your point of view. Yes, I will explain what happened. He began to calmly describe their journey to the elders and the sect leader. In the middle, Jogul, Yunjong, and Yu Yisol came forward to speak about whatever he had forgotten. Of course, Chung Myung started to doze off, but no one paid attention to him because of this exciting story. And as the story continued, Hyunjong opened his mouth further and further. And when Baekchun finished speaking, even the elders and the disciples couldn't take their eyes off the disciples. To obtain an alliance from the Tang family in Sichuan. Yes. In the meantime, you knocked out the elder of the Tang family. Chung Myung did it. Hyunjong looked at Chung Myung, who was sleeping. He took the bandits and went to Yunnan to form an alliance with the Beast Palace. An alliance. You can think of it as an alliance, but it is a bit different. Still, it has the same meaning. Now, the disciples of Mount Hua will be treated without bias in Yunnan. But, and you also received the monopoly rights of the Yunnan tea. There was someone better than Baekchun who could answer that question, and Baekchun looked at Jogul. As soon as he saw that, Jogul bowed his head and answered. The situation in Yunnan is very serious. Without asking permission, I ended up using my family as the agent who represents us to trade the tea. The transport will be made under the name of Mount Hua. I beg you to punish me. Punish? Punish? What for, you idiot? All of... Hyunjong stuttered, unable to believe all that he had heard. You did this in just a month's time. All this? Can this even happen? At this point, Hyunjong thought it was more ridiculous than happy. He had to speak, but he couldn't respond. Hyunyoung grabbed Hyunjong by the shoulder as the man was unable to speak in this situation and said out loud, Sect leader! Hyunyoung opened his mouth with a serious face. Do we have no work in the north or the south side?
What is that? And then, Hyunyoung glanced at Chung Myung as he whispered,
Let's send them outside one more time, Sect Leader. We never know. Maybe this time they'll come across a phoenix.
For a second, Hyunjung wanted to follow that advice.